Her wheelchair wasn't a symbol of weakness. It was her battleground, and today it was about to become a war zone. Before we dive into this story of unimaginable cruelty and the one man who stood against it, if you're new here and believe in justice, make sure you're subscribed. What you're about to see will change you. The sun was a merciless, brilliant gold over the sprawling green lawn of Oak Creek High School. It was the kind of late afternoon that should have been preserved in memory, all soft light and long shadows. For Sarah Jenkins, it was just the familiar path home from the library, her worn backpack slung over the handles of her chair, the quiet hum of its motor a soothing sound. She wore a faded sky blue basketball jersey, a relic from a life before the accident, a life where her legs obeyed her commands and her biggest worry was a free throw percentage. Now her world was smaller, defined by ramps and the occasional pitying glance. But she had Buddy, her beautiful, loyal German shepherd, his leash tethered loosely to her chair, trotted beside her, his ears perked, his tongue lolling in a happy pant. He was her shadow, her protector, the four-legged reason she never felt truly alone. They were a team, a unit of two, navigating a world that had irrevocably shifted. The peace was as fragile as glass, and the first crack came with the sound of raucous laughter. A sound that didn't belong in the serene landscape. From around the corner of the large, red, brick school building, they emerged three boys, maybe seniors, maybe recent graduates, clinging to faded glory, swaggering in their blue and yellow varsity jackets. They moved with the unearned confidence of predators in a territory they owned. Sarah's breath hitched. She knew them. Or, more accurately, she knew their type. They were the reason she took the long way around, the reason she avoided the school grounds after hours. But today, they had found her. Well, look what we have here. The one in the center, a lanky boy named Jake with a cruel twist to his mouth, sneered. The cripple and her mutt. Out for a stroll. Sarah kept her eyes forward, her hand tightening on the joystick. Just passing through, she said, her voice quiet but steady. Don't let us stop you. The second one, a bulky kid named Derek, chimed in, stepping directly into her path. He kicked at a pile of her books that had spilled from her backpack when she jolted to a stop. Actually, we insist. The third, a weaselly-looking boy named Leo, just grinned, his eyes darting around as if looking for an audience for their cruelty. Buddy let out a low, warning growl, the sound rumbling deep in his chest. He positioned himself slightly in front of her wheelchair, a solid, protective wall of muscle and fur. Oh, the doggy doesn't like us? Jake mocked, taking a step closer. Maybe he needs to learn some manners. Leave us alone, Jake, Sarah said, her composure beginning to crack. The old fear, the one she fought every day, started to coil in her stomach. Please, Derek mimicked in a high-pitched whine. You think please is gonna help you. You think anyone's gonna help you. He lunged forward, not at her, but at Buddy. It was a feint, but Buddy reacted on instinct, surging forward with a ferocious bark. His teeth bared. It was the excuse they were looking for. He's rabid, Leo shrieked, a false, panicked cry. What happened next was a blur of violence that seemed to suck the very light from the day. As Buddy stood his ground, a low, menacing growl his only warning, Jake pulled something from his waistband. It was a small, cheap pistol, something he likely kept to feel powerful. He didn't aim it at Sarah. He aimed it at her dog. The first shot was deafening, a crack that shattered the peaceful afternoon. It missed, tearing up a chunk of grass near Buddy's paw. Sarah screamed, a raw, guttural sound of pure terror. No, Buddy, run. But Buddy didn't run. He was a protector, and his human was in danger. He charged. The second shot didn't miss. It caught him high on the shoulder, spinning him around with a sharp yelp of pain. He stumbled, but got back up, blood already darkening his fur. The third shot was the one that broke Sarah's world. It hit him in the hind leg. He went down hard, his body slamming into the grass, a pained whimper escaping his lips before he fell still, his sides heaving with ragged, shallow breaths. Buddy. Sarah's scream was a thing of pure anguish. She tried to propel her chair forward, but Derek was on her in an instant. He grabbed the handles, yanking her back. Her wheelchair tipped precariously. Papers and books from her spilled backpack fluttered around them like wounded birds. Let me go! He needs help! Please, he's dying! Tears streamed down her face, cutting paths through the dust on her cheeks. Jake stood over Buddy's motionless form, the gun smoking slightly in his hand. He gave the dog a vicious kick with his booted foot. Buddy's body jerked, but he didn't make a sound. He was unconscious, lost in a world of pain. "Looks like he's learned his lesson," Jake said, his voice cold and empty. Then he turned his attention to Sarah, the real target. Leo moved in, helping Derek restrain her. She fought, her arms flailing, her fists connecting with nothing but air. She was strong, her upper body honed from years of navigating a world not built for her. But they were two against one. Derek leaned in close, his breath hot and foul on her ear. "You should have just stayed out of our way, cripple." His hands went to her throat. He didn't squeeze to kill, not at first. It was a slow, deliberate act of domination, cutting off her air, making her feel the absolute depth of her powerlessness. She gasped, her vision starting to spot with black dots. The world began to narrow to the feeling of his hands on her skin, the sight of her beloved dog bleeding out on the grass, and the sound of their laughter. This was how it would end. Not with dignity, not with a fight, but broken and forgotten on a sunny lawn. She closed her eyes, a single, final tear tracing a path to her chin. 100 yards away, Staff Sergeant Mark Rios, United States Navy SEAL, was running. He was on leave, visiting his younger sister who still lived in his hometown, and his daily run was a sacred ritual, a way to keep the edge honed even when he was thousands of miles from his team. He wore faded camouflage pants and a tight, fitting tan t-shirt, his body a coiled spring of muscle and discipline. His dog tags jangled softly against his chest with each footfall. He'd chosen the route past his old high school for the nostalgia, for the long, flat stretches of grass. He saw the scene unfold from a distance, and his brain, trained for microseconds in combat, processed it with chilling clarity. The three aggressors in varsity jackets, the woman in the wheelchair, the restrained posture, the kicked motionless animal on the ground, and the one choking her. The switch flipped. This was no longer a run. It was a mission. His pace shifted from a steady jog to a full-out, heart-pounding sprint. The easy rhythm of his breathing vanished, replaced by a cold, focused silence. He was a weapon, and he was being aimed. He dropped his camouflage backpack without breaking stride, its contents, a water bottle, a protein bar, his phone, spilling onto the grass, forgotten. As he closed the distance, the details sharpened, each one a fresh stab of fury. The woman's bruised face, the tears, the desperate, weakening struggles. The dog, a beautiful German shepherd, lying in a growing pool of its own blood. The casual, soulless cruelty in the boy's postures. They were so absorbed in their torture, they didn't hear the thunder of his approach. Mark Rios didn't shout a warning. He didn't yell, "Stop!" or "Freeze." He moved with the terrifying economy of a predator. Derek, the one with his hands on Sarah's throat, was the primary threat. Mark didn't grab him. He struck him with a closed fist. A short, devastating blow to the side of the head that was less a punch and more a neurological shutdown. Derek crumpled to the ground like a sack of stones, his eyes rolling back, his hands falling away from Sarah's neck. She drew in a huge, ragged gasp of air, her vision swimming back into focus. The man who now stood where her tormentor had been was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He wasn't just big, he was immovable. A force of nature carved from granite and wrath. Leo, the weaselly one, stared in shock for a half-second before his fight, or flight instinct, heavily weighted toward flight, kicked in. He turned to run. He didn't make it 2 steps. Mark's hand shot out, grabbing him by the back of his varsity jacket and yanking him backward.